And welcome back to another great episode of hashtag Screw the W2. And it's hard to believe this is actually episode number 51 coming out. And today I have another great guest. It actually was referred by her partner in crime, by Christine Hsu, who appeared on, let's see, that was back in episode, oh wow, back in episode 16. So with that, Margaret, excuse me, Margaret Kozlark, welcome to the show.
Hi, John. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Glad we could finally connect, and
Mhm.
obviously, we can get a little bit more of your business that you and Christine work together. But maybe for starters, and I know you spent I think you said about 20 years in the corporate
Mhm.
space beforehand, but can
Sure
you
did.
take us back to what your previous W2 job was? What was it like? What was an average day like, so to speak?
Sure, absolutely. So I started my career as an analyst at
Okay.
Nielsen TV ratings. So I was basically one of those little moles in a cubicle crunching number for 8 hours a day. Um, but then eventually I moved into account management. And so that was great because it got me out of the office, but it also involved a lot of travel. I had a big long commute to New York City for many years and did a lot of travel. And it was hard because I had young kids and I felt like I was missing a lot of their just little milestones in life,
Yeah.
right? Just like obviously I was there for the walking and the talking, but just the little school plays and the little room mom things. And I really wanted to find a way that I could have a career but still be present for my children as well.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And yeah, that's kind of a recurring theme. And yeah, as we're recording
Yeah.
this, I've just turned 18-month-old, and he's walking and babbling and
Aw.
just thinking it's like, yeah, I don't want my previous W2 where I was at the height of it. I left the house about 6 in the morning and got back at 6 at night. So I don't want to
Dark when you
repeat
leave,
that.
dark when you get back.
Pretty
Yep.
much, yeah. So
Yeah.
so with that, Margaret, obviously you mentioned you went from analyst and then went to an outside role, but what was or maybe there's a series of moments of an I got to get out of here moment, or I can't do this till I retire, or anything like that.
Wow. There were so many moments. Um, I'm sure you cover this theme a lot, but one thing I do want to say is I think for so many of us, we think we're doing what we're supposed to be doing to care for our families, right? Like everybody says, go to school, get that good job, work your
Yep.
way up the corporate ladder. So I did all of that. But what people really don't talk about is that you really pay a price with
Yep.
every rung that you climb on that ladder. And it's
Hmm.
usually time, sometimes it's physical health. There was one point where I was commuting 2 hours
Oh,
each way to work. It
jeez.
was nuts. I would drive
Oh,
to the train, take the train, then take a subway. It was just insane. It was just not a
wow.
way to live. So that was one thing. But the big thing was, as I said, it's okay when you're young. And I
Hmm.
loved the travel. It was exciting. I got to see almost all 50 states, loved it. But when you become a parent, your priorities shift and you
Yep.
realize there's more to life than that. And I have these beautiful little people that I want to spend time with. So I think for me, there were many different moments that led up to it, but I remember very clearly I was in Florida at a conference. I want to say it was a 4A's conference. It was a market research conference. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I
Okay.
had to stay. The conference was ending, I think, on a Thursday, and I wanted to go home on Wednesday because my both my daughters were in a play Wednesday night. But I had to stay till Thursday morning because I had a meeting with a guy at Anheuser-Busch who was my biggest client at the time, and so I was just
Okay.
like, oh, I kind of have to do this, but I'm going to miss this play of theirs. And
Yep.
I was able to get a videotape of it, but it really wasn't the same. And I just
Mhm.
remember thinking, I shouldn't have to choose my family
Right.
over my career. Like this isn't right. I don't like feeling like in this instance, I put business over family.
Yep.
So at that point, I thought I need to get out of here. I need to kind of have my priorities shift.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And yeah, like you said, it's been a very common theme, especially with, family, relatives, so forth. But
Yeah.
once you had that moment, like you said, you were in Florida, what were your next steps to get out of the rat race? Or were you kind of at a point of what do I do now?
I was kind of at a point of what I do now. What do I do now? But what I will say is that about a year or two before that happened, I had a really good friend who had said, hey, I have this good friend named Joe Fairless, and he's starting to
Mm,
buy apartment buildings, and you should you should do this. Okay. So first of all, nobody knew who Joe Fairless was back then. And I'm like, buy an apartment building? What are you, crazy? Like, I got kids to take care of.
Yeah.
So, but she goes, no, 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 you can invest passively, blah, blah, blah. So full disclosure, I was like, this just sounds crazy, but I loved the idea of what she was saying. So I thought, well, you do it and I'm going to watch, right? I'm going to see what happens. So she started telling me about it. And she, by the way, was Joe's very first investor.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was very early. So they did it and she started reporting these returns to me. And I was like, you know what? I kind of like this, I can do this. So mindset check. Second problem was, even though I had a great paying W-2, I was a single mom. So I'm like, well, I don't have $50,000 lying around. But
Yeah.
what I did have is I had a 401k.
Ah,
So I started investing with the 401k. So I had learned from there, okay, this makes sense. And my first project was great. I think I put in 50,000 and then 2.5 years later, that 50 had turned into like 78 between distributions and the
wow.
exit. So I'm like, okay, I like this, right?
A lot better than the stock market, especially the 2022.
100%, but it was all still pre-tax dollars. So I thought,
Yeah.
okay, well, I need to kind of figure out a way to kind of make this, work. And then, so then my mom passed away, left me a very small amount of money. And I thought, well, let me just kind of try to do this. So I started making that. And then basically what happened was, I sort of took it almost like a ramp.
Okay.
So when I left the W-2, I ended up becoming a residential real estate agent because I really
Okay.
wasn't making enough money investing to live on. And I
Hmm.
really wanted to make that my long-term plan anyway. So
Sure.
I thought, well, let me take these sales skills and all these skills I've learned from account management. And I love real estate anyway. So let me just start selling houses in my area.
Hmm.
So that's what I started doing. And so I actually am still a residential real estate agent. And all the money that I make from syndication, I just put off to the side and I keep growing that nest egg for,
Okay.
whenever it is I'm, ready to dip into it. But for now, I'm kind of doing both worlds, but all in real estate and complete
Mhm.
flexibility, which is what I wanted.
Yeah. And I can definitely feel for you there as I got my real estate license in 2020. And ironic, it was originally I wanted to have access to the MLS because my first real estate deal was actually an MLS. It's like,
Oh, okay.
there are deals out there on the MLS. It's
There
kind of
are,
nice to
yeah.
just have, access to it. I don't have to bug my, friend like, hey, can you send me info on this listing? Hey, can you send me a search on this and do that? Now I have access. And well, now I just checked the other day. There's like 13 listings in Marshall, a town of 14,000, give or take. So it's like, well, sooner or later this will turn around.
Inventory is very, very tight right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. Where I'm in Fairfield County, Connecticut, and it is very, very low. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of nationwide, and now they're always talking, the sellers, they kind of a little bit of a hindrance to them selling is they don't want to get rid of their low mortgage rate. And I just looked online the other night, that's somewhere 85% of all first lien mortgages out there nationwide are at it was like 4.6, let's just say 4.7 or less. And it's like, wow, that's kind of a disincentive to sell.
When the pandemic happened, I always tell people it was like lighter fluid on the Connecticut real estate market.
Mhm.
I used to literally go to open houses that were, let's say, a million or more, and I would bring a book and I would read for 2 hours because no one would come. And then the pandemic happened, and all of a sudden, people were streaming out of New York. And who could blame them? They were stuck in
Yeah,
this, however, 800 square foot apartment, maybe with a couple of kids. It was
yeah.
not a good situation. So take that, compare it with insanely historic low interest rates, and it created this frenzy.
Hmm.
So, and I think to your point, that's why it's not surprising that 88% of them are under four, because I think there was so much real estate that was sold during that time period.
Yeah, exactly. So
Mhm.
when obviously we can one real estate agent to another, I'm sure we could go down there a
We can
rabbit hole
geek
for
out on
another
that.
hour or so. But back to once you looked into apartment buildings and started to see the growth of that through your self-directed retirement account and what was possible. From that point on, how long did it take you to exit the W-2? And then what was, or do you remember roughly when that day was?
Yeah, it was around January 19th, January 2019, rather.
Okay.
And there was some changes in the market research company that I was working for at the time. They were based in the South, and it was just kind of like, okay, this is the time to make that switch.
Mhm.
But it was interesting because what had happened prior to that is that I had family and friends coming to me saying, okay, so what is this you're doing? You're my department's wait, okay, I want to
Yep.
know about this. I need to get in on this, right? So first I was just sort of sending them over, to other people. And I'm like, well, this is crazy. Why I can do this. So I set
Mhm.
up a little LLC and kind of, started working on, sort of co-GP, fund to fund stuff. And but I wasn't really doing it in earnest. And then, when I kind of started doing the real estate agent stuff, I was still mostly investing as an LP, but with some
Okay.
GP opportunities here and there. And then, really, once I brought in a partner, which was about 2 years ago, then we started working together. We had some nice complementary skills. And that's when we were able to really kind of, take off. We've done about
Okay.
4 years or 4 projects rather just in the last year. We're wrapping up our fifth. And I've met such amazing people in this space, including you. We met during, I think, one of the LinkedIn challenges.
Yep. Yeah.
And
Hats off to Yona Weiss. I think that's where half my podcast guests come from.
I bet, right? But it's wonderful because you realize, the other thing too, I'll say quickly is that I don't I don't know what your previous W-2 was, but for me in market research,
Hmm.
nobody really used LinkedIn, right? So
Yep.
it was usually, hey, I've got a new job. Hey, I'm going to be at this conference, or hey, we hired somebody. And then
Yep.
nobody would respond. It would just sort of sit there. And I have found that real estate, commercial real estate is, first of all, a very generous space, but maybe we're just all a bunch of number nerds because we all love to talk about this. So it's such a
Yep.
wonderful, engaging group of people on LinkedIn. And that's, I think, been good for everybody, right? Everybody's kind of helping everybody out, which is wonderful.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. And yeah, to your question, I spent 12 years in corporate America selling copiers, printers, and technology equipment. And
Okay. So
yeah,
were
I
they
got
active on LinkedIn, John?
what's that?
Were those folks active on LinkedIn?
Not really. No, no one ever reached out. I'm thinking about upgrading this Sharp to a Konica Minolta. What would you suggest?
Let's
That
do a
never
poll.
happened. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, well, as
Yeah.
we're recording this, Margaret, we're a little past 4 years that you were able to leave the W-2 job. Looking back, is there anything that you miss or any regrets that you have from leaving?
Um, Yes, no. I mean, I miss the people, right? I loved
Um,
my coworkers. My coworkers were amazing. And it's really funny because we're recording this on a Thursday, and tomorrow I'm actually meeting with a whole bunch of former coworkers for happy hour.
oh,
So
cool.
I think it's good to keep those relationships alive. And several of them have invested with me too, by the way. They're just
Oh,
not quite ready
nice.
to leave. So that camaraderie, I would say, is a big thing because when you start, a lot of times it's just you and a laptop in a home
Yep.
office, and it can be
Yep.
really isolating. And that's why I appreciate the community of LinkedIn. So that's one. And then the other thing is, obviously it's there's a comfort in having that steady paycheck, right? There's a
Hmm.
reason why so many people like the
Yep.
W-2. Going out and being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart,
Nope.
and whether it's being a real estate investor or being a real estate agent, there is that roller coaster, right? You've
Yep.
got amazing months and then you're like, oh my gosh, and then you're up. And so I think just kind of, navigating that is a challenge, but it's still not anything that I would change.
Yeah. No, totally agree with you there. And yeah, with well, and excuse me, with my previous W-2, and I think in a way it kind of helped me become an entrepreneur because we had a set, albeit pretty low salary for our, every 2 weeks. And then we were paid commission on top of that. So yeah,
That's
there were
true. That is a good point.
months it's like, oh my gosh, hey, we're going to the Bahamas. And next month, I hope I can afford a Happy Meal at McDonald's. This is a really low
It was the
paycheck.
same thing for me. It was a
Yeah.
base plus commission. Yeah. So that's
Okay.
true, actually. So we kind of were used to it anyway, a bit.
So now on the flip side of that, Margaret, since it's been 4 years, what's been the best part of your entrepreneurial journey or being leaving the W-2?
Um, so many great things. Again, amazing people I've met, wonderful sense of community. But I really have to say, probably the best thing has been the flexibility.
Okay.
I can go on a Tuesday with my daughter to a college visit,
Okay.
or I if my son needs something at his school, I can do it. You know what I mean? I mean, you
Mhm.
obviously have to still, a lot of times I'm working late at night, you
Yeah.
still have to get the work done. But the point is, you've got the flexibility during the day for those things that aren't as flexible and that you don't want to miss, whether it's
Mhm.
chaperoning a school trip or, again, doing a college visit or something. I can do those things. When my mom was ill, I was able to go spend some time with her. So just a bunch of things like that, that I think for me, it was just all about that flexibility.
Gotcha. Yep, definitely makes sense. So, with that, Margaret, maybe you've already heard this or talked to some of your old coworkers, but do any listeners out there or anyone listening to this or watching this, maybe they, gosh, I got a 2 hour drive to my work and this is getting grinding, or whatever the case is, that they're not happy or fulfilled at their job, but call it the every 2 week paycheck, the insurance, the retirement account, whatever. Just
Yeah.
something feels like they're stuck. There's no way they could possibly make that leap. What advice or maybe words of wisdom would you give to them?
So I think what I would say is sit down and look at it clinically, almost as if you were sort of evaluating a project. But of course, money is important, but don't
Yep.
just look at the money. Look at those, sort of non-hard costs. What are you missing at home? You mentioned you've got an 18-month-old. 1 month
Yep.
is a massive change in an 18
Yep.
months old's life, right? Huge things can start. He can get a bunch more words. He can maybe be running instead of walking. All kinds of things can happen. So I
Yep.
guess I would say that. And I would also think, where do you want to be with your life? Some
Hmm.
people, prefer to stay in a W 2, and okay, that's fine, but
Hmm.
don't do it because you think you have to and you have no other options. You always have options. Just
Hmm.
plan for what you want them to be. Because I think, and I was guilty of this too. I think for so many of us, when we are in that W 2, we're so almost drunk on those, like, those twice a month paychecks. We don't
Yep.
really look ahead to plan.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe you're planning for vacation, maybe you're planning for college, but are you really, or retirement, or you're
Yep.
planning for, I need to escape in 4 years and I'm going to make this plan and I'm going to follow it. So
Yep.
you can do it. Don't feel like you can't. And I'm happy to, obviously you're the pro at this. I'm happy to chat with anybody too if they just want to, swap stories, but it can be done, I guess is what I would
Yep.
say.
Yeah. No, and it's kind of funny you mentioned that. We've been so programmed by that paycheck, every 2 weeks. And I know they've had, well, I think since I've been in high school, they mentioned, X number of people live paycheck to paycheck. And I've always kind of wondered is, not to say that there aren't industries, jobs that treat their employees like crap and pay them, below market wages. There's
Yeah.
definitely that. But I've always wondered, is it really that the paychecks aren't enough, or have we just become so programmed we know whatever the amount is, we get $2,000 every other Friday. Okay, I'm going to spend $1,000 on my mortgage and housing costs. I'm going to spend $500 on my automobile payment. I'm going to spend $500 on groceries and eating out. And oh, there's the $2,000. Guess I got to wait till the next pay period. It's like we're almost just building our life around that paycheck, whatever it is.
We are. And you want to know something interesting? So yesterday was my son's birthday and we were playing the game of life. And I don't know if you've played the game of life
Yep, I
recently.
have. Yeah.
I hadn't played it in a while. And so we're playing this, and I'm like, man, this talk about programming. We are totally programmed. If you want that higher paying job, you got to go to college, right? You got to get in
Yep.
debt, you got to get those promissory notes. And I'm like, even a board game is
Yep.
like this, it's everywhere. It's so pervasive. I, by the
Yep.
way, just on principle, was like, I've decided to forego college, and because there are other very, high paying jobs out there,
Yep.
even trades. But it was so interesting to watch, like, wow, this is really interesting. Here's a board game that was built in, the 70s. No wonder we're all
Yep.
programmed. Go to college, get the
Yep.
grind, work, and maybe by the time you're 60
Yeah.
or 70, you can retire, and then you're so exhausted and broken down, you can't really
Exactly.
enjoy life.
Yeah, yeah, where I'm more of a Monopoly player or the cash flow game by Rich Dad, Poor Dad,
Yeah.
Robert
Oh,
Kiyosaki.
love the cash
So
flow game. 100%. Yeah.
well, so close this out, Margaret. I want to thank you again for taking time out of your schedule to share your story with my listeners. For lack of a better marketing term, I've started calling this the unscrewed moment. If you want to share with my listeners, now that you are an entrepreneur, 4+ years out of the W-2. Anything you want to share, like how to get a hold of you, what new projects you and your partners are working with, or maybe what you're excited about most 20 as we go into 2023?
Sure, absolutely. So there's a couple things I'll say. First of all, would love to chat with anybody about all things real estate. I am on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.
Okay.
Hopefully, I think you can see my name there on the list. I'm pretty much one of the few Kozlarks out there,
Yeah,
so it won't
yeah.
be hard to
I'm
find
the
me.
only John Rickard in the entire world, so it's not hard
Yeah,
to find
exactly. I
me.
think there's like five of us, and they're all related to me.
Oh, wow.
So, but Nobly Vest itself, Nobly Vest does a lot of amazing projects, mostly multifamily, and we
Okay.
do a lot of 506Bs. And just really quickly, I'm sure you've discussed this, but 506Bs are good because if you're not an accredited investor, you can still
Yep.
invest, but you have to have that prior relationship. So that's why
Right.
if anybody's interested in getting on our mailing list and seeing our deals, reach out, schedule a call. We never sell. It's all about education. But if we
Mhm.
have that conversation and I know what you're looking for, you can see our deals and maybe we'll work together down the road.
Yep. Yeah, I always and I've done a number of podcasts and little intros as far as 506C versus 506B. I always make the
Yeah.
joke if it's 506C, it's see you later, and 506B, I'll be right back with my money. That's how I remember it.
Kinda, yeah, kinda, yeah.
So, all right. Well, I appreciate that. Sharing that, and I'll make sure I link that in the show notes, as well as your YouTube channel for Nobly Vest. And hope you and Christine have a great rest of 2023 and knock it out of the park with all your syndications.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me on.